Hi everybody. Today we are doing section 12.1, 12.2, and 12.3. All of these sections are just key features of quadratic functions and graphing them. So we kind of smushed it all into one set of notes. So here are our learning targets for today. It says I can write a quadratic function from a verbal description. I can identify and interpret key features of the graph of a quadratic function. I can identify key features of a quadratic function from an equation written in standard form. And I can use these key features to graph a quadratic function. All right, if you guys look at this box down here, we've heard a lot of these terms already, okay? We're just kind of bringing everything together now. So remember, the vertex is the highest or lowest point on the graph, all right? That's very similar to like your max or your minimum. It's the same point, all right? To find the vertex, remember it's hk, and here's the little formula to find h, and then how to find k. Your axis of symmetry is x equals h. X-intercepts are where the parabola touches the x-axis. We can factor that out or use the quadratic formula to solve. The y-intercept is where the graph touches the y-axis. We can plug 0 in for x to solve for that, or it's just the c term of the function in standard form. The maximum is the highest point on a graph. Remember, the maximum looks like this. And then the minimum is the lowest point on the graph, okay? And we're looking at the y-coordinate for those. One thing I did want to say real quick, with the x-intercepts, remember, that's when you plug 0 in for y. And then the y-intercepts is when you plug 0 in for x. Okay, if you want to think of it like that as well. All right, anyways, let's get started. So it says write the following quadratic equation in standard form and identify the vertex. All right, so as we can clearly see, this is not in vertex form, and it's actually not in standard form either, but we need to write it in standard form, okay? So standard form is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so we need to get it in that form. So all we really need to do here is FOIL this whole thing out, okay? So I'm going to rewrite this over here. Go ahead and FOIL it. Now I'm going to focus on just my sets of parentheses first, and then I'll distribute the 4 at the very end. So I have 4 times, this is 10x minus x squared plus 80 minus 8x. Then I have 4 times, it's negative x squared. Let's see, 10 minus 8x is going to be 2x plus 80. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and distribute that 4 through. So this gives me negative 4x squared plus 8x, right? Yeah, plus 8 times 4 is 32, so 320. All righty, so there's my equation in standard form. All right, and then now it says to identify the vertex. So the vertex, we can use h and k up here. So h is negative, my b value here is positive 8. Remember, use parentheses when we plug in numbers. Over 2, my a value is negative 4. Okay, so this gives me negative 8 over 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. 2 negatives make a positive. 8 divided by 8 is just 1. So there's my h value. Now to find k, remember you're just solving f of h. Well, remember f of h. So my h value was 1. So all I'm doing is plugging 1 in for x into this equation right here. So I have negative 4 times 1 squared plus 8 times 1 plus 320. And I'm going to go ahead and type that into my calculator. Oops, negative 4, parentheses, 1 squared plus 8. Look how I'm plugging everything in parentheses, especially if you have a negative number you have to plug in. Be careful. So 324. And then I just have to put the h and k value together in parentheses. So the vertex is 1, h was 1, k was 324. Okay? Alrighty. Next it says identify the x and y intercepts of the following function, okay? So remember to find the x-intercepts, we're going to have, that's when y equals 0. And the y-intercepts are when x equals 0, okay? So let's solve the x-intercepts first. All right, so I need to set this function equal to 0. So I have 4x squared plus 14x minus 8 equals 0. Now I can either factor or use the quadratic formula. Let's see if I can factor this. I do notice that everything is divisible by 2, so I'm going to take out 2 here. So we get 2x squared plus 7x minus 4. All right. So my GCF was 2, so my two factors, all right. Let's see here, 2x, to get 2x squared I need a 2x and an x, right? Oh, whoops, I wrote 2x twice. Oopsies, sorry guys. Let me move this a little bit so you guys can see it a little better. Okay, and then factors of 4, and I got to get 7x. Let's see, it looks like I should probably do a 4 here and a 1 here, because this will give me 1x, right? And 2x times 4x gives me 8x. And if I say this is, I need to get positive 7, so plus 8 minus 1. So the 4 needs to be plus, and the 1 needs to be minus. Negative 1 times positive 4 is negative 4, so I'm good. All right, so awesome. We have our factors. To solve for x, remember you set each of those factors equal to 0, including your GCF. But does 2 equal 0? Nope. So we can ignore the GCF there. Okay, and then I have 2x minus 1 equals 0, and then I have x plus 4 equals 0. All right, and solve for x. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides here. So I get 2x equals 1, and then I'm going to divide both sides by 2, so x equals 1/2. And then over here, I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides, so x equals negative 4. All right, so my x-intercepts are 1/2, 0, because remember, the x value is 1/2. The y value, remember we plug 0 in for y, so that's why that's a 0. And I have negative 4, 0. Okay? All right, the y-intercept, we're going to plug 0 in for x. Well, remember the y-intercept, you can plug 0 in for x, or it's also just the c term in standard form. Remember, this is a, b, c, okay? It's just the c term, but think about it. If I plug a 0 in here, this whole term is 0. This whole term would be 0. So it's just negative 8. So the y-intercept, I plug 0 in for x, and then my y value was negative 8. All right, so don't overthink that y-intercept. Okay. Alrighty. For the given function, identify the vertex, the y-intercept, the x-intercept, and the axis of symmetry. Find the value of the max or min, then graph. All right, so now we're kind of bringing everything together here. So, all right, let's start from the beginning. All right, so identify the vertex. Alrighty, so vertex, that equation, or that like little setup is hk, but first I gotta find h. Real quick, I'm gonna label what my a, b, and c are. A is -1, b is 2, and c is 12. Yeah, okay. So h is negative b over 2a. All right, so I get negative 2 over negative 2, which equals positive 1. And then k is f of that h value. So again, we're just doing f of 1 here. So now I'm going to plug that back in. So I have negative 1 squared plus 2 times 1 plus 12. All right, let's practice typing that into the calculator. So I have negative 1 squared plus 2 times 1 plus 12. I get 13. All right, so my vertex, it's HK, so 113. All right, here I can do it a little closer if we need to. Alrighty, and then So I did that. The y-intercept, oh, that's just going to be the c value, right? So that's, and remember, you could plug 0 in right here. Negative 0 squared, that will give you 0. 2 times 0 is just 0, so it's just 12. So the y-intercept is 0, 12. Okay, check. The x-intercepts, I have to plug 0 in for y. So I'm going to plug a 0 in right there for the x-intercepts. I'm going to do, whoops, this work right here. So 0, or I don't want to write the 0 first, sorry. Okay, so negative x squared plus 2x plus 12 equals 0. All right, we can factor out the GCF of the negative 1 just so then we have a positive x squared, but notice, since this is a coefficient of 1 technically there are no factors of 12 to add or subtract to get 2. So I'm not going to be able to factor this. So I have to resort to the quadratic formula, okay? And we have already learned this, so no big deal. So x equals negative, my b value is 2, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. Oh, I gotta catch up with myself. All over 2a. Now remember to double check this. So this is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. Good. All over 2a. Good. I always double check before I go out and solve this. So I get negative 2 plus or minus, let's type this guy in. So 2 squared minus 4ac. 2 squared minus 4ac. Yep. 52. So square root of 52 all over negative 2. All right, and then we need to see if we can simplify the square root of 52. Let's go do that off to the side over here. Whoops, I'm going to just scoot this just a little bit. Okay, let's just do the square root of 52 real quick over here. So factors of 52 that are a perfect square. Let's try 4. Oh, perfect. All right, so this is really just the square root of 4 times the square root of 13. Square root of 4 is 2. I cannot take the square root of 13, so this is just 2 square root of 13. So I'm going to replace that down here. I'm going to substitute that in for the square root of 52. All over negative 2. Okay, now notice that I can simplify these 2's. These coefficients, okay, I can simplify those. I can divide those all by 2, right? So I'm gonna, yeah. You also can think of this as, well, here, let's just do that. Sorry. All right, and so negative 1 plus or minus 2, oops, no, we're dividing by 2, so that's just square root of 13, sorry. All divided by negative 1. Now, you guys could technically take this a step further because you're dividing the negative 1 by negative 1 and the square root of 13 by negative 1. So this is really just 1 plus or minus the square root of 13. And some of you might be like, well, that's negative, so don't those signs change? Well, then they would change back anyways because of the plus minus, all right? Anyways, so our x-intercepts, they are 1 plus the square root of 13, 0, and 1 minus the square root of 13, 0. All right, so did that. And last we have the axis of symmetry. So the axis of symmetry is just the h value, right? Yeah, x equals h. So x equals, my h value was 1. So see, I don't even need to solve anything there. All right. Then it says find the value of the max or min. Remember the max or min is that vertex, okay? So my vertex is 113. That's that coordinate point, but okay, let's look here. Okay, this equation, the graph will point down, right? Because that a value is negative. So since it's pointing down, I'm going to have a maximum, all right? So my max, and it's just the y value. Up here in your notes it says it's the highest point, it's the y coordinate. Well, the y coordinate of the vertex is 13, so my max is 13. All right, so these are all the key features you need in order to graph this function. All right, so now we go ahead and plot it over here. So I'm going to count by 2's on the y-axis because I don't think all these points will fit. So I'm just going to count by 1's over here. All right, so let's graph the vertex first. So 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So 13 would be right there. Okay, and then my y-intercept was 0, 12. And my x-intercept, let's do 1 plus the square root of 13 in our calculator. That's 4.6. So 1, 2, 3, 4.6. And 1 minus the square root of 13, negative 2.6. All right. And then I have my axis of symmetry at x equals 1. So I'm going to draw that as a dotted line just to kind of set it apart because it's not part of the function. And my max is at 13, so we already know that. Now, remember parabolas, they're symmetric across the axis of symmetry. So if I have this coordinate point here, I also have it on the other side of the axis of symmetry. All right, and then if you guys want to get more points, you always could just plug in like x values. Like I could plug in -1 for x and find out what that value is. So let's just go ahead and do one of those. So I have -1 squared plus 2 times -1 plus 12. So I get 9. So -1, 2, 4, 6, 8. So 9's right in the middle. And I'm just going to reflect that point. I'm 2 away from the x-axis. So I'm going to go 2 away. Or not the x-axis, so sorry, from the axis of symmetry, so I'm going to go 2 away from the axis of symmetry on the other side, okay? You guys can see that even the x-intercepts are like symmetric with the axis of symmetry. And then I'm just going to connect my dots. All right, so that's how you guys can get a nice pretty picture of your graph without typing that onto your calculator, and you will have to be able to show all that work. All right, good job today, guys. Go ahead and start the homework.